Awesome. Well, thank you very much and welcome back, everyone. I hope you had an opportunity to grab something to drink. So we are about to settle into something pretty spectacular now. So I have the distinct pleasure of introducing our very own Dr. Tanya Cannon. She is probably one of the most dedicated educators, researchers, and leaders that I've ever met. Her expertise in curriculum development, instructional design, and higher education leadership is unmatched. And with over 20 years of experience in higher education and more than 30 years, yes, I don't believe it either, as a human resource professional, she empowers learners and educators through innovative strategies, equity driven practices, and a passion for lifelong learning and academic excellence. She will be sharing her level up learning, gamification strategies that drive online engagement. So buckle up. Make sure your eyes are facing forward, and we are in for an absolute treat. Over to you, Dr. Cannon.
Thank you for that very warm welcome, Dr. Siganoff. Good evening, everyone. I am honored to be here with you today at SOAR here at Westcliff. And as Dr. Siganoff indicated, for over 30 years, I have worked at the intersection of human resources, organizational development, and education. As both an educator and a consultant, I've seen firsthand the challenges of keeping learners engaged, whether they're undergraduate students, graduate learners, or professionals in training. Much of my work has centered on finding innovative strategies to not only transfer knowledge, but to spark motivation and transform learning into something that's truly meaningful. So let me start with a quick question, and you can respond in the chat if you like. When was the last time you lost track of time because you were so fully immersed in a game or activity? Maybe it was a video game or a puzzle or even a mobile app. Think about that sense of focus, that sense of excitement and progress. That's the energy that we can harness in online education. Today, our objective is to briefly explore how gamification can transform online learning into an engaging, motivating, and an immersive experience. We'll look at why it works, how to apply it thoughtfully, and how it can shift students from passive participation to active, inspired engagement. I'm really excited to share not just the research, but also some of the practical strategies and examples that you can take back to your own teaching and learning environments. So let's dive in and see how we can level up together. One of the biggest challenges we face in education today, especially online, is keeping learners engaged. Access to digital classrooms has grown tremendously, obviously, since COVID, but participation and motivation remain major hurdles. Research shows that online courses have significantly higher dropout rates as compared to face-to-face learning. And in fact, there was a report from EDUCAUSE Review that noted online courses can see attrition rates ranging from anywhere from 40 to 80%, which is much higher than traditional classrooms. Many students cite a lack of engagement and a sense of isolation as key reasons why they're struggling to persist. So what does that tell us? It tells us that content alone isn't enough. We can deliver information, but if students aren't motivated to interact with it, the learning simply doesn't stick. This is where gamification comes in. Gamification is the strategic use of game mechanics, things like points, levels, badges, leaderboards, and storytelling in non-game contexts. In our case, that context is the online classroom. There has been research that describes gamification as using this strategy to drive participation and engagement, and that's an important thing to understand why it works. When we borrow these elements from games and integrate them into learning, we tap into something formidable. That's that human drive for achievement, recognition, and progress. Games keep people engaged for hours, not because they're easy, but because they create that sense of challenge, reward, and progression. Applying those same mechanics in education encourages learners to log in, participate more actively, and push through obstacles. In short, gamification matters because it directly addresses two of the biggest barriers in online learning, motivation and retention. By making learning feel active and rewarding, we create an environment where the students aren't just showing up to complete a requirement. They're engaged, they're immersed, and they're committed to moving forward. Now that we've seen why gamification matters, let's talk about the science behind it, because it's not just about adding fun features. It's about tapping into deep principles of human motivation and cognition. So first, let's talk about motivation theory. Psychologists often distinguish between intrinsic motivation, that's that drive to do something because it's inherently interesting or satisfying, and extrinsic motivation, which comes from external rewards like a good grade or making the dean's list. Self-determination theory tells us that learners thrive when three psychological needs are met: autonomy, competence, and relatedness. Gamification, when designed thoughtfully, can support all three of these. For example, points and levels provide a sense of competence. Leaderboards foster relatedness and social connection, and the ability to choose pathways or challenges enhances autonomy. Research has shown that when gamification supports these needs, it leads to stronger engagement and persistence in learning tasks. The cognitive science connection is the second piece I want to address. Human beings are wired for storytelling, rewards, and challenges. Storytelling activates multiple areas of the brain, including those linked to memory and emotion, making information more memorable. Rewards, even simple progress markers, trigger dopamine release, which is closely tied to motivation and reinforcement learning. And challenges, when calibrated correctly, create what psychologists call a state of flow, that sweet spot where tasks are difficult enough to be engaging, but not so difficult that they feel impossible. So gamification leverages all three of these: narrative, feedback, and challenge to create that immersive learning experience. So let's get really practical. What does gamification look like when applied in real classrooms and training programs? So I've listed here 5 strategies that research shows can make significant difference in learner motivation and engagement. And they're fairly self-explanatory, so just for the sake of time, I'm not going to unpack each of these. But what I will say is that across these strategies, points and levels, badges, etc., the common thread is clear. Gamification works best when it aligns with learning goals and it taps into our psychological needs for progress, recognition, and mastery. Not about making school or training into a video game. It's about using proven design elements to make learning more engaging, more social, and meaningful. So I've listed here some examples in practice. You may have heard of some of these. Kahoot is one that I know a lot of instructors use. I've created a Jeopardy game for some of my classes that are specific to the contents in that course. This background here with the desk and the chair, that's an online escape room that is available for students and instructors. There are crosswords, Scrabble, Pictionary. You can turn anything into something that is meaningful in terms of being able to use it as a game for various platforms. Classcraft is another platform that universities use as well. As exciting as gamification is, it's not without challenges. And if we don't address these thoughtfully, the strategies can backfire. So let's take a look at a few key considerations. Avoid game fatigue. Just like any tool, gamification can lose its impact if you do it too much or if you're not doing it correctly. And research shows that when learners perceive game elements as repetitive or disconnected from meaningful progress, that motivation can actually decline. Second, you want to balance intrinsic and extrinsic rewards. Badges, points, leaderboards are great, but if learners only chase rewards, are most likely going to miss the deeper engagement. That self-determination theory I talked about earlier reminds us that intrinsic motivation driven by curiosity and mastery is what sustains learning on a long-term basis. Third, ensuring inclusivity and accessibility. Not every learner responds to competition or visuals in the same way. So, for example, some students may find leaderboards discouraging particularly if they're consistently ranking lower, right? And accessibility also matters. Visual badges on interactive games have to be designed with universal design principles so learners with disabilities can fully participate. So aligning game mechanics with learning outcomes is really going to be a key strategy. Perhaps the most important point, actually. It shouldn't be just about entertaining. Uh, there has been various research that has found that when gamification was tied directly to course objectives, students not only enjoyed the learning more, but they also performed better academically. When it was disconnected, it distracted rather than helped. So the key to sustainable gamification is intentionality. Avoid fatigue by keeping it fresh, balance rewards with deeper motivation, design for inclusivity, and always align with outcomes. As we come to a close, let's quickly recap the key takeaways. Um, Gamification enhances motivation and retention, and I'm sure that in many instances you've seen how points, levels, immersive storytelling can keep learners engaged longer and learning more effectively. Strategies work best when aligned with those outcomes. Success comes down to thoughtful design and learner inclusivity. And here's my challenge to you. Before you leave today, think of just one gamification element, a progress bar, a badge, a leaderboard, even a narrative twist that you can apply in your next online course. Even if you're the learner, you can do that for yourself. And imagine the difference that it might make in how you as a learner engage, or how, if you're a faculty member, how your learners are engaging. Because ultimately, learning should be more than just consuming content. It should be an adventure. When we design learning as that adventure, we don't just keep students in the game, we're helping them to thrive. To that end, I want to remind some of you are familiar with this. I have produced the Faculty Student Engagement and Assessment Conference, which is a virtual gathering that's focused on advancing the ways in which faculty and students connect, interact, and measure learning outcomes. And the mission there is to promote meaningful engagement and effective assessment practices across higher education. We held our inaugural session in May of this year, and we will do our next session in May, most likely in May of 2026. And I would invite you, if you have an interest, my email is here, and that's the website address. If you have any questions or are interested in learning more or speaking at the conference. So thank you for listening, and I am open for questions.
All right. So it looks as if we have a question here from Mina. What is your personal favorite gamification tool in education?
I really have enjoyed putting together the Jeopardy uh, questions. It really seems to help students reinforce what they think they know, what they thought they knew, and things of that nature. So that's been my favorite. The second close runner-up is the escape room. I really think that that has been super fun for students as well.
And I think that we have someone in the chat who was saying that she was working on a game, an escape room, I should say, with something called Genially,
Yes,
if that
that's the
rings a
one.
bell. Wonderful. Okay. So we have another question here from Roshan Koirala. What are the key design principles educators should follow to ensure gamified activities enhance learning outcomes rather than distract from them?
Essentially tying the activities with what the course learning outcomes are, and those are listed typically in your syllabi, ensuring that each of the questions or activities is tied to a specific learning outcome. That's going to be the most effective strategy in ensuring that you're doing it for the sake of that content versus doing it just for the sake of doing it. And students can certainly tell the difference.
Right, right. No kidding. And Sabrina Duncton asks, I have used gamification Jeopardy on site. It was successful. How effective is it online?
I have used it. I teach almost exclusively online, so it is tremendously successful. And it's really about making it engaging to the material. Um, that's where the students find the fun, I think. And oh, I remember we talked about that, or oh, I remember that example, and those sorts of things where you really make those links.
Gotcha. So Latoya Little Forrester asks, can gamified activities assist persons with attention and organization challenges?
I think definitely because the game can be how long can I stay attentive? How long can I how much of this, how many minutes will it take me to remember to do X, Y, or Z? If you can make the game your own, in other words, it doesn't have to be your instructor that does it. You can turn this into a game yourself. And if you can find what works for you in terms of areas where you may be a little more needing improvement, then that's the area that's going to help you the most, if that makes sense.
Yes, it does. Dorcas Sakuya Obeng asks, which gamification would you recommend for first-time users?
I think probably the escape room is probably the easiest one because it's already set up. But if you're looking to create something, I have a Jeopardy template that I send out to other instructors. Um, there are all kinds of things that you can do yourself to create a Pictionary. You can, going back to the use of AI, you can ask the AI to create a crossword for you, those types of things.
Got you. And Dalma Kumari asks, what challenges might arise in ensuring equal access to these digital learning tools for all students?
I think, especially with those who have visual impairments, that can be more of a challenge. So that's why I think using uh, strategies or games that are pre-vetted that have taken those things into account are going to probably be more successful, especially for a new someone who's new towards gamification. But ensuring you have to know your audience, and if you know that someone has ADHD, or you know that someone is dyslexic, or those sorts of challenges, then you have to really be intentional. And I think I used that word in the presentation.
Yeah.
Intentionality is key in ensuring that this is accessible and inclusive for everyone.
Thank you. And Mohammed Vahidi asks, can gamification be effectively implemented at every level of education, or is its impact limited to specific stages of learning?
Great question. And I know it's every level. of course, you probably wouldn't do a Jeopardy game to a kindergarten class, right? So you would want to make but I mean, realistically, I suppose you could do a hangman type of a thing with pictures. You could do Pictionary for younger learners. And as you advance, you make it more and more challenging to the level of learning and skill that is uh, at 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 issue, right? So at middle school, that's where we have Cahoots and those types of things. But you also have Kahoot, I believe, at the college level. So
Right.
there are many ways that instructors are using these tools and technologies successfully at every level.
And Ismuth Zareen asks, how could she be sure that their game development is going the right way? I think that's a question that I would probably have too. How do I know if it's going to be effective in the way that I'm designing it?
I think it's trial and error most of the time. I think you have to pilot it, maybe take a class session and do that during class and see, maybe do the game and then do a check-in with a pop quiz or something like that and see if what you have taught or what you have put in the game has been effectively demonstrated in that check-in, in that pop quiz, in that reflection. Those are that's where you're going to see, obviously test scores are going to be another factor, but again, making sure that you're checking in and saying, hey, what do you think? I always like to do that. I introduced an AI prompt in one of my doctoral classes, and I asked the students, I tell me what you think. It's not going to hurt my feelings. If you don't like it, tell me. But we have to partner. This is a partnership, and
Right.
it's not about me. I have my degree. I'm trying to help you get your degree, and that's where the partnership comes into play.
And several people have asked if you would be willing to share your template for gamification for first-time users.
Uh,
So if you're
Absolutely.
able to,
Email me, and I'm happy to send you the template.
awesome. And then I think we have time for one last question. How can we be more focused on the gamification and avoid the students getting frustrated?
Frustrated in what way? Frustrated in the game or frustrated just in general?
That's a good question. I don't have the follow-up to that. So, Anil, if you want to drop it in there, or you want to email your question to Dr. Cannon, I'm sure that she will drop her information into the chat here. And I know Priscilla has a question too. If we can answer it really quickly, how do you overcome the barrier of teachers who are resistant to innovation?
I will tell you're probably going to think I'm very harsh in saying this. I put my email in the chat.
Oh,
Um,
brilliant.
if you can't change your people, change your people. I mean, that has been my mantra as a human resource professional. If you can't change your people, then you have to change them. And sometimes that's having a hard conversation with someone who's unwilling. Um, it can be a little bit of coaching, but at the end of the day, you're either on this train or you're not. I
Right.
and I am not going to argue about it. This train is going. And are you with me or are you not? Up to you.
Well, I think by everything that's been said in the chat here, our students are very much with us. So, Dr. Cannon, thank you so much. I appreciate you sharing your wisdom with us. I love the slides that you created. I loved hearing how you engage your students, and your passion just oozes from you. So, lucky students who get you as their professor, and look at all these hand claps, and they're very well earned.